Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, joined alongside Joe Kmetz. And Joe, we're back. I woke up this morning thinking, you know what? I'm all previewed out. I don't feel like talking about the Georgia secondary or the Kansas State offensive line or who's going to win Week 10 between Missouri and Texas A&M. I'm ready to talk actual games. Give us the plays. Give us the winners. We're here, Week 0. Who cares if it's only 4 games? We start off with a really solid game, and it gives you that little taste, and as you like to say, that little appetizer before we really get into it starting Thursday, and then a full weekend of Labor Day games. But, Joe, we're back. It's been a long off season. It feels like so long without meaningful football. It's a long time since that national title blowout between Michigan and Washington. A lot's transpired since then, but here we are, August 24th, just a few days away. We're back.
It feels good, Coyle. It feels I've used the appetizer reference before. You can also liken it to like that first beer you have at the pregame. When you know it's going to be a good night, you know it's going to be a good season. We're getting football back. Yeah, the first beer isn't going to get you drunk. At least I hope it doesn't. But it's setting up for a lot of great things. This slate, we only have 4 games involving FBS teams. But it doesn't matter. We're still getting to watch meaningful football. The games mean something. No more NFL preseason trying to pretend that it means, all this when you're watching it on TV. It feels good to lock in. We have power conference football. We have 3 ACC teams playing. SMU, new ACC team. Just reminder for everybody who might not know that. We got football, like you said, Cole. We have actual games to talk about. There's no more, previewing, position groups. Like we have actual games to talk about.
Yeah, and that's the best. I know there's the party poopers who are like, oh, I don't care. It's Montana State playing New Mexico. No, it's football on the screen. I'm hoping even Saturday it's like bad weather forced me to sit on the couch or forced me to sit at the bar and watch these games all day. But I kind of like it too because it's 12, 4, and 8. I saw today, if you want to watch the Hawaii game at midnight, you need to pay $69.99 just to watch that one, or you could buy the season pass to the Spec Network, which is a nice calm fee of $269.99. So if you're up that late, you're probably just going to be following that one on your phone, but it's a nice little 12 o'clock kick. You wake up, watch some game day. Then you got a 4 o'clock FCS versus FBS game. You probably won't watch either of those teams the rest of the year, but throw some coin on it. And then SMU Nevada, and SMU is a team we'll talk about that I think can make some noise this year. Like looking at their schedule, I think they're going to be favored in 9 or 10 of their games. They have a real chance to make some noise in the ACC this year. So very excited. If you're new to the show, if this is your first time tuning in, Joe and I go through typically for Week 0. Obviously, there's only 4 games, so we'll hit on all 4 of those. But we pick the 5 best games of the week. We try to pick any games first ranked and ranked opponents. And then we pick a G5 game of the week as well. And I think this year it's even more important to dive into these G5 games and these G5 teams because one of those teams will be going to the playoff most likely that we talk about. So it'll be kind of a goal of ours to hit on one of those teams, a different team kind of every week. You're probably going to run some repeats when we get down the stretch and we're starting to talk about playoff spots, but try to hit on these top G5 teams to give you a closer look at them. If they're not one of the main teams on TV on ESPN or ABC or CBS or NBC or whatever, Fox, that you're tuning into, it could be a team that it's worth taking a look because you might have a chance to watch them in the playoffs. So definitely excited. I already got the Week 1 slate all lined up, but we got Week 0 to dive into first, Joe. And this is the one we've been counting down to. Dublin, Ireland. Number 10, Florida State versus Georgia Tech, a little neutral site. ACC action to start off the year. So, no cupcake for Florida State with Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech, you get a big boy in Florida State, the reigning ACC champ. A noon kick on ESPN, as we said, over in Ireland. This line's been moving back and forth. Our document, we got Florida State minus 11.5. Over under is 55.5. Last time we saw Florida State play, Joe, lost 63-3 to Georgia after kind of bowing out after getting shunned from the playoff due to the Jordan Travis injury. So do they make a resounding return to the college football scene, you think?
I do. I was talking about this a little bit earlier in our group chat, Coyle. But I think Florida State's going to cover here. I think they're going to win 35-20. I took them minus 12.5 back in like June because I remember thinking like, oh, the line will go. I was thinking the line was going to go up. Quite the opposite. I saw some sites have it like all the way down to 10, which is crazy. Georgia Tech, people getting a lot of respect. I saw on Twitter, like all the sharp money, whatever the hell that means, is on Georgia Tech. I am not a sharp, obviously. I'm just a fat kid who likes to watch football and drink. I think Florida State's a better team. I think that Norvell has been using this all off season. Now, granted, a lot of guys either graduated, left in the portal, the same group every season. However, I still think that they're using the end of last season, not getting into the playoff, as a motivator to go forward. I think they come out. I don't think they're going to beat Georgia Tech by 50, obviously. I think it'll be a 2-touchdown game, but I think it'll be enough to cover the 11 and a half. I think Florida State's on their way to a solid season. And Georgia Tech, I know they have a lot of ranked teams on their schedule, but
They do have a tough schedule.
They end their end of the season is like, I'm looking at the first half, it's pretty manageable, but they end the season at North Carolina, neutral site Notre Dame, at Virginia Tech, home Miami, home NC State, at Georgia. That's a tough second half of the season. Like, they could very realistically go, if they lose this game, 5-1 and then finish the season 5-7. So, if you're Georgia Tech, you really, might want to try to win this game if you want to try to build momentum for the season. Because especially if you get blown out, which I don't think will happen, you could be looking at a long season ahead.
Yeah, Georgia Tech's one of the teams that I think like we're gonna look at and be like, wow, at the end of the year, like, wow, they only finished 5-7, like, but they picked off, like, just say they pick off Florida State here, or they pick off Notre Dame down the stretch. Like, it won't surprise me if they knock off any of these teams, but and they could have like better statistics. That just schedule is really tough. I mean, it remains to be seen kind of what Florida is, but they're kind of in the same boat where Florida might be a pretty good team, but their schedule is just so tough. It doesn't really show it at the end of the day. So Georgia Tech's going to be an interesting watch, I think, for sure this year. And I forgot to say this at the beginning too, but for every game we give our straight up pick, then we give our pick against the spread and our total as well. So a little three-way action there on each and every game. Like we said, we do typically the 5 best games of the week and then the G5 game of the week as well. So as we talked about, Joe, we made it kickoffs here, the premier game of week 0, obviously. Although I think SMU is going to be a player in the national conversation, I'm glad they're going to kind of get some national spotlight in week 0 as well. But I like Georgia Tech to hang around in this one. I think that they're going to be a frisky team. As I said, I think I'm not going to be surprised if they pick off 1 or 2 teams this year and people are like, wow, where did that come from? Because they're, a 500 squad or something like that. As we said, their over-under for wins is only sitting at 5 on DK at -110, but that schedule's so tough where I think it's kind of just a stay away. 5 ranked teams on it as you were going through, and then Virginia Tech, who we both think could be a 9-10 win team. So not really sure if they'll even get to that 6, but I do expect this team to make some noise this year with a couple upsets and be a fun watch with Haynes King at quarterback. The offense returned 7 starters, including, as we said, Haynes King, but they averaged 31 points per game last season. So that's no slouch of an offense, and they take on an FSU defense that's going to have a lot of talent. It's probably going to be the stronger side of the ball on this team, but only returning 4 starters from last year. So I think it could be a little bit of an adjustment period early on. And when you're playing a returning offense with the returning quarterback with 7 guys back from last year, that's not kind of the offense that you want to be playing against during your first live action. So I think Georgia Tech has a real shot to at least put a scare into Florida State in this one. I think the Georgia Tech offense could have a leg up on the FSU defense, be able to move the ball on them, especially early on. And while I'm not a DJU fan, and while FSU is a favorite to win the ACC, I think he really caps their potential. So I am worried about Florida State, especially out in the early goings. My play that I have in this one, actually, that I bet was Georgia Tech first quarter +3.5. I think with the returning guys on offense, they could strike quick on an FSU team that's ushering in a lot of new players. So I'm looking for Georgia Tech first half +3.5 there. And FSU only has 4 starters back on offense as well, so it might not be smooth sailing in the early going. I think they'll eventually find their groove against a Georgia Tech defense that is going to be the downfall of their team. So I think Georgia Tech puts up a good fight, but Florida State talent triumphs in the end. I will take Georgia Tech for the spread +11.5 and the over 55.5. But my official play for that game is that Georgia Tech first quarter +3.5. I think that they kind of make things interesting early on. All right, we're done the doubling game. We go to an FCS at FBS game where the FCS team is favored unbelievably. You got the Montana State Bobcats. Joe, I believe you have a shirt of those guys traveling to Albuquerque to play the New Mexico Lobos 4 o'clock kick on FS1. Montana State, a 10.5-point favorite here as the FCS team, over under 53.5. You think Montana State goes in there and doesn't even pull off the upset, but just gets the win over the FBS team?
I think they will win the game. However, I don't know, like taking an FBS team at home when they're given that much points. I'm going to take it. I'm a sucker. I know that, but I'm still going to take Mexico to cover the 10.5. I'm going to go Montana State 21, New Mexico 16. Love the under in this game. We have it here at 53.5. I took it a little bit earlier today. It was 54, so I took the under there. I think if Montana State is going to win this game, because to me, at the end of the day, even though it is New Mexico, it's still an FBS school. It's still an FCS school. I doubt, knock on wood, you're going to get a game like I forget who played North Texas in like 26. Portland State. Yeah, I don't know how I remember this, but Portland State played North Texas and beat them 66-7. It was the craziest FCS win ever. They dominated them completely. I think they might be able to dominate them, but I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. New Mexico has the potential to be really bad. Bronco Mendenhall, first year there, after leaving Virginia, kind of under like weird. Like no one really knew why he left Virginia. Building something there, Virginia too. They went to the ACC title game. I'm going on a tangent there, but I'll take Montana State to win. Take New Mexico to cover. Take the under. Love the under. Forgot to mention last game. I'm going to go with the under in the Florida State Georgia Tech game.
You think it's worth potentially sprinkling on New Mexico money line? It's plus 350 in this one, and you got to think like New Mexico. They probably think even within that locker room, like, how many wins do we actually have a chance at getting this year? Like, this has got to be one of the games that you think, like, and I saw they're paying Montana State a pretty hefty amount of money to come and play them, as John Rothstein would say, a buy game.
I think like $375,000.
Yeah, so it was a good chunk of change.
Amount of money.
Yeah, so that's something we got to, I think, at least consider, but I'll go kind of the opposite way, but this game just screams week 0. You have Montana State, an FCS team, 10.5-point favorite here against an FBS team. That just screams college football is back, as well as the midnight game that we'll get into. But Montana State enters the year as number 4 in the nation in the FCS poll. New Mexico, in my Lindy's magazine, ranked 124th out of 134. So that kind of goes to speak about the expectations for both of these squads at their levels. This is the only time we're going to talk about either of these teams this year. I would be surprised if we talked about them once again. So we won't go too deep into it, but New Mexico only returns 1 starter, and their best player, the running back Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, he transferred to Arizona. So your best weapon from last year's team that was abysmal as well is out the door. It could be a long year in Albuquerque, and I think it's going to start with a double-digit loss to an FCS school. I'm going to go Montana State 30, New Mexico 17, Montana State minus 10.5, and the under 53.5. And I too might take the under in this one, Joe. See how I do in that first game, but I might take the under as well. I think it could be a tough time for this New Mexico team moving the ball this year. All right, I'm excited for this one, the night game, SMU at Nevada, more so for SMU's sake. They're a team that I think both of us have talked about decent amount this offseason, and a team that I think a lot of people in the media are kind of high on as they transition into the ACC. They travel to Nevada for an 8 o'clock kick on CBS Sports Network. SMU's a 26.5-point favorite here. Over under is 56.5, Joe. Do you think SMU takes care of business in this one and covers that spread?
I think they'll take care of business. I don't see it being a sweat. However, I think 26.5 is a lot of points. It's kind of tough. My one thing thinking, like my thought process behind this is it's very hard to open up the season on the road, even if it is Nevada. You know what I mean? Especially in week 0, you're going to kind of be going into a game right away where a lot of these programs are going to have another week to practice. I remember back in like 2019, Miami played Florida in week 0, and it was a very sloppy game, a lot of turnovers. And it's just tough, when you want to have these games start the season at home. You're kind of accelerating the clock. You're going on the road. Nevada's going to suck this year. Do not get me wrong. I just think that 26.5 is a lot of points. I bet Nevada to cover back in July when I was down in Virginia. It was 24.5. Both of my FBS games, by the way, really bad. I thought I was smart. both went the complete opposite ways of how I thought. I saw at one point this spread was up to 27.5. Now it's back on DK. I looked before the show, 24.5.
The
But
Delaware State Hawaii game was opened up at 27. It's probably going to
yeah,
close at. It's probably going to close at 40.
I can't believe I'm so mad that I did not see it open at 27. That's just crazy to me. Um, but yeah, I think SMU is going to have a really good season, Coyle, like you were alluding to earlier. They should be 4-0 heading into they host Florida State. That could be the biggest game, at least since before the death penalty at SMU. It's going to be a massive game. TCU week before that, big rivalry game. They do have a really manageable schedule. If you want to talk about a dark horse team to bet to either make the playoff or win the conference, SMU is one of those teams. They have a very manageable schedule. They have 7 home games. One of their 5 road games is against Nevada, and then it's against Louisville, Stanford, Duke, and Virginia.
How about to make the ACC title game? You can bet that plus 475.
I would definitely bet that. In Connecticut, I don't think I can because Connecticut is a dumb state because UConn has football and a lot of futures are not available. Like I can't bet on a team to win the national title. I had to do that when I was out of state, which makes no sense to me because every other state that has that rule, they have the parentheses like no insert state here schools. Unless I'm stupid and can't find it, which is probably the case. I don't believe I can bet like a football national champion, but I digress. SMU, like Coyle, I agree. If you're just going to sprinkle a team to make it, to make the tally up plus 475, if I can find that bet, I will definitely place that because SMU can be a real dark horse team competing for the playoff. I was about to say the NCAA tournament, like we're talking March Madness, but like the college football playoff, that's definitely a team to keep an eye on.
Yeah, they host Florida State, as you said, host TCU, where I'm interested to see how they bounce back. And at Louisville, but they avoid Miami, they avoid Clemson, they avoid Virginia Tech, they avoid in the non-conference Nevada and Houston Christian, and BYU is projected towards the bottom of the Big 12. It's a very, very winnable schedule, and plus 475, like to make the ACC title game, could see that happen, and that would be a pretty wild turn of events for an SMU squad in their first year in the ACC, but they are a team, as we were kind of just talking about, I think is going to surprise some people this year and make some noise in that first year of the transition. I locked in their win total on Monday over 8.5 at plus 120. I think it's a team that has potential to win 9-10 games. They only have one ranked team on that schedule, as we said, with FSU, and they avoid some of the big players in the ACC, and they get to play Duke, Stanford, and UVA, who are the 3 projected bottom teams, I believe, in the ACC this year. So very favorable schedule. They're going to be a team that you see ranked in the top 25 at some point in the year. I guarantee that. In Nevada, when you look at them, they're going to be one of the worst FBS teams this year. Win total is only 2.5. SMU returned 7 starters on offense, headlined by quarterback Preston Stone, for a team that put up 38.7 points per game last year. That was 8th best in the country. I think this one's going to be ugly. I'm probably not going to touch the game. The spread or the total because I have that win total, just get me the win SMU. But I did take the SMU team total of over 41.5 at minus 115. I think it's a game where they put up 45 to 50 points, and the defense on SMU, not great, but the offense will go out there, play up tempo, sling the ball all around the yard. They could score kind of in flashes. And if Nevada has the ability to go out and answer a couple, you might get close with that big spread. But SMU, I don't think Nevada's going to be able to stop them on the defensive side. So I think SMU goes up there, puts up 45 to 50 points, and you cash a team total there. So I'm going to go SMU 45, Nevada 14, SMU minus 26.5, and the over 56.5. All right, final game, as we talked about. If you want to watch this one, you got to pay $69.99 for the individual game on the Spec Network, or you can buy the season-long pass, which I think I heard was $269.99. So pick your poison there if you really are itching for football that bad. But I'll probably be watching this one on Gamecast at a bar somewhere, maybe chasing after how that SMU game goes. But Del State at Hawaii, 12 a.m. kickoff, Hawaii, a 38-point favorite, over under 55.5. Do we even know if Dell State's there after their snafu that occurred in the travel? That was the word they used. No, this is a
Yeah.
football team traveling across the country. That's not a snafu. That is a major mistake. I think I saw too. They paid them over like $1 million, and now you're gonna have. I think they said they have to split players up and
Yeah.
get commercial flights. I mean,
I saw that I saw it on Twitter.
what an absolute joke.
They're trying to split the team up on available commercial flights. I saw it was like someone was like, this would be a nightmare for like one person if they missed the flight. Now you're having about 100 players, all these staff members and everything. You have to fly across the entire half the Pacific Ocean because of where Hawaii is. You're flying almost halfway around the world.
So Delaware State's flight is further to Hawaii than Florida State to Ireland.
Yes, that's just insane. And the fact, too, that it's not being talked about enough that they had to drive over 3.5 hours to get to JFK to make the flight is even crazier. You're telling me there's not a closer airport? Like, I feel like they're closer to D.C. than they are to New York, where they are in Delaware. Philly, yeah, that's another one. But Coyle, this is the game. I know you said earlier the Montana State New Mexico game screams week 0. This game screams week 0. This is just Delaware State is a special kind of awful. I'm going to say if Hawaii doesn't cover the spread, I have them winning 59-7. If they don't cover the spread, you have to view that almost as a loss. And I'm not even being dramatic when I say that, especially after all of this flight drama and everything. Delaware State, Coyle, you talk, when it's March Madness season about body clock games. This is a midnight kick. And if, let's say you're one of the players, if they did have to split it up, let's say you're getting there tomorrow. Like, you're basically,
they practiced all week.
You're getting a night's sleep. And I wonder how they'd even do practices if people went in separate days. Like, this is a nightmare. This is like if Hawaii doesn't win this game by 100 points, it's an embarrassment. This is like a must-cover game. Open up the season on a high note. Start off 1-0. I think they play Albany later in the year as well, which is just insane. That like I get, like, oh, let's get a game in Hawaii in the middle of the season, but it's just crazy to me. Hawaii big. I know nothing about Delaware State besides that they're really bad. I looked it up. I texted one of my friends. I think they're like 26-94 since 2011, which is really bad. You definitely do not want to be 26-94 over like a 13-year span. So I'm going to go with Hawaii.
They went 1-11 last year. Their only win was against the Virginia Lynchburg Dragons, who's part of the NCCA, which is the National Christian Collegiate Athletic Association. That was their only win last year. They lost to Army. They lost to Army 57-0. They lost to Bowie State in week 1 last year, who is also not a Division I team. I mean, you said it best. It's a special kind of awful. The athletic program as a whole is usually just terrible. The basketball team was actually like solid last year, like went like around 500. Usually they're like the worst team in KenPom. So maybe things are headed up for the Del State Hornets on the hardwood. But Hawaii is a team that can score. They can throw the ball around the yard. They have a game next week. This is where kind of the angle comes in, I think. They have a game next week against UCLA. It's at Hawaii. They have a legit shot to win this one. So basically kind of treat this one with a vanilla game plan. Use this as like your preseason game, I think. You put your starters out there. You run your basic set of 10, 15 plays, probably go score every drive that you have the ball, get up big, go up to 28-0 at half, and then give your backup some time in the second half. But you're going to have opportunity to go out there and get some live action before UCLA comes to town, and UCLA is viewed as a team that's going to really struggle this year. People think Hawaii is a live dog the next week, so watch out for that game next week. We've mentioned that on the Gambler a couple times this offseason, but expect a very vanilla game plan, and I expect them to kind of take the foot off the gas. So my angle on this one is I'm looking at the spread here for Hawaii in the first half, minus 21.5. I locked that in. As I said, I think they get up big, and they get up big early. They should cover this spread even with the backups, as we talked about how bad Delaware State is, but you never know. Things can get funky, and we're not going to sit here and act like we know what the 2 deep and the 3 deep on the Hawaii depth chart looks like. So I took Hawaii minus 21.5 in the first half. By the time that's over, it'll probably be time for bed too. So that'll be a good way to fall asleep, hopefully. But I'll go 52-10, Hawaii minus 38 over a 55.5 hit in there. And depending on how the day goes, I think I saw Delaware State's first half team total is 2.5. So I might go with it. I might take the under there as well. Have some fun with it. But all right, that's our big 4 games of the week. The most exciting 4 we'll probably get through all season. But to end out this show, this is what we also do. We give our lock of the week. We give our favorite play, whether it's against the spread or a total, or sometimes last year we even put like 2 money lines together to do a parlay, something like that. So this is our lock of the week segment. Joe, minimal kind of options here, but and it also can't be like, a minus 700 money line. Like we give legit plays like under 125, I'd say is usually the max. But your lock of the week for week 0, let's see if we can get it started out on a high note.
So my lock of the week, going with a total here. I'm not going to do Hawaii. That's no fun. We already just talked about that. My favorite play of the week, my lock of the week, is the under 54 or 53.5 in the New Mexico-Montana State game. I think that game is going to be a low-scoring slugfest type of game. Like I said, 21-16 seems appropriate, but even if the game ends 24-20, I'm still hitting my under there. I do not see these two teams scoring, more than 53.5 points. So my lock of the week is the under in that game at 53.5.
My lock of the week for week 0, I'm going to go with that SMU team total over 41.5. We touched on Nevada's going to be a terrible team this year. And this isn't the first team you want to see if you are Nevada. You'd much rather play a team that kind of plays like a pro style, going to balance out the run and pass. SMU plays an up-tempo style, not going to huddle. They're going to get to the line. They're going to throw the ball all around the yard. Something that I'm sure that they've practiced against preparing for this game, but they haven't seen it at a high level. They haven't seen it with a quarterback like Preston Stone that can execute it, and the skill position players for an offense that returns 8 starters from last year and averaged 38 points per game last season. I think SMU and Preston Stone use this game as kind of a talking point where it's like, all right, we're here. We're in the ACC now. Watch out for us this year. Even if it is Nevada, they go out there, kind of show no mercy and really put the foot on the gas. And we talked about it too, Joe, with the schedule. Like, the schedule is not that favorable, or the schedule is very favorable, excuse me. You're going to have to win, I think, sometimes with style points. So look for SMU really to be a team that doesn't take the foot off the gas if they do expect to be a team competing in the playoffs. So SMU team total of over 41.5 is my lock of the week there. All right, dog of the day now, our underdog of the week. Typically, we do a team for full game here, but limited options once again with only 4 games. But so we take our favorite underdog. You can take them on the money line if you're really that confident, or you take them up against the spread. So, Joe, dog of the day for week 0 for you is?
So my dog of the day for week 0, last year for week 0, we did the spread. I tried to do money line the rest of the way, but I'll pick a money line. I don't know if I'll actually bet it, but just because of how limited the options are, normally I do bet my dog of the day. But I'm going to go with New Mexico here. Once again, Coyle, you kind of said it the best earlier. Like, if you're an FBS team, and you got to be using this as motivation too. Like, I know you're not allowed to bet on the games, but people see things on social media. They hear, things on TV. You're a double-digit dog at home to an FCS school. I don't care if it's, North Dakota State. You're like, screw that. We're the FBS team. We're supposed to be in the higher division, and we're going to come out and beat you. And that's why my dog of the day for this week are the New Mexico Lobos. I think that they're definitely going to cover the spread, and I think that they can be a live dog in this game against an FCS opponent.
My dog of the day, dog of the week for week 0, I'm going with Georgia Tech plus 3.5 in the first quarter. We talked about it earlier where I think it could be a bit of an adjustment for FSU out of the gate. Only 4 starters back on offense, 4 on defense, new quarterback coming in. And I talked about this last night on the Gambler as well. It's not like DJU had, the past year or 2 in the system, knows how to operate the system. Like, he's getting thrown out there into live action for the first time. So I know it's a new starting quarterback, but it's also a quarterback that's new to the system and hasn't been, adjusted to. He doesn't know. Mike Norvell might not even know like what's the kind of play calls that he likes during live action, the rhythm those things kind of take time to kick in. So if they they get the ball first and 2-3 and outs or something like that, Georgia Tech with a team that returns a lot on offense, they get a quick strike, even if it's just taking time off the clock. Like Georgia Tech doesn't need to win the quarter, but keep it within that 3.5. I think that's very doable. I think there could be some growing pains early on for Florida State. So I'm going to go with Georgia Tech plus 3.5 there, first quarter. Let's get our first bet of the season out of the way in 12 minutes or 15 minutes?
15.
15 minutes, yeah. So let's get that first loser out of the way, most likely. But all right, Joe, we did it. Week 0 is in the books. Like I said, I already got the week 1 document all filled out. The matchups are all laid out. We got some really good games. I mean, to get into right away. Like you start off on even Thursday night. We're not going to touch on some of these, but the Minnesota, North Carolina, North Dakota State, Colorado, those are pretty solid games Thursday night. And Saturday, we got Clemson, Georgia, Penn State, West Virginia, Miami, Florida, Boise State, Georgia Southern, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and USC, LSU. We got some good ones to get into. So anything before we head out, Joe, and you have that first beer on Saturday?
Enjoy it. We're back. We made it through the off season. I think I said the last couple of years, just enjoy it, because as crazy as it seems, we'll blink and we'll be talking about conference championship games. So enjoy the season. Best time of year. Football's back, and just enjoy every second, because before you know it, it'll be, the Monday after the Super Bowl again. You're going to be like, what do I do now? So enjoy it.
All right, everyone. As always, thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we will talk next week for week 1. Good luck on your week 0 plays. I want to see some winners out there.